I clean daily rental apartments for a living, which means I spend most of my time walking into other people's finished stories with a trash bag in my hand. By the time I arrive, the guests have already argued, laughed, cried, scrolled, showered, and checked out. I get the hangover after the weekend, not the party itself. My job looks simple from the outside. Reset the bed, scrub the bathroom, hide the stains, and make the place look like nobody real ever slept there at all. But lately, it feels like the apartments are getting better at pretending, and the devices inside them are getting worse at forgetting whoever they just watched. This story starts with a host named Raymai, who manages several city center units through one of those booking platforms everyone claims to hate, but still uses constantly. He's usually calm, sends tidy checklists and clear codes, but the night he messaged me about this unit, his texts came through sharp and frantic like snapped wires. "Can you take a late job tonight?" he wrote. "Guest checked out this afternoon, but my auto system keeps sending movement alerts from inside the flat." Late jobs are normal. Movement alerts after checkout are not, especially when they're coming from an apartment with a digital lock that logs every open and close. I asked for the address, the floor, and the code, and he replied instantly, like he'd been staring at his phone waiting for any sign of my 3 dots typing. "It's one of the old buildings near the tram," he added. "Just a warning, there's a locked door inside the unit. It's the owner's closet. Never open it, key is gone." Owners love their locked closets. They're where ugly lamps and broken chairs go to die between redecorations, but Raymai's warning still made something inside me lean forward. "I can't open it without a key anyway," I wrote back. "What's with the movement alerts then? Your system doesn't know what a locked door is." He replied with a screenshot. Camera icons, little red triangles, timestamps. Repeated lines that all said the same thing in sterile system language. "Motion detected, internal hallway 0217, the alerts read, stacked one above the other like someone had pasted a nightmare every night for a week. I stared at the time and felt my stomach tighten in an unpleasant, familiar way, the kind you get when a pattern you don't like shows up in a new place. I have a notebook full of weird things I've seen in rentals: hidden cameras, glitchy locks, vents that watched too carefully, and 0217 shows up in more lines than it should. "Is the internal hallway camera inside the flat?" I asked. "Because if it is, your guest might not be the only one who had reasons to leave early." "It's not in the flat," he replied. "At least not in the floor plan they gave me. There's the bedroom, living area, kitchen, bath, and the locked owner's closet. That's it." Something didn't fit. Internal hallway alerts from a unit that didn't have an internal hallway, during nights when the guest was already asleep or not even there. I agreed to take the job, grabbed my cleaning kit and my notebook, and headed out into a city that always looks more honest after midnight than it does at noon. The building was old stone on the outside and new plastic on the inside, the stairwell smelling like a blend of dust, fresh paint, and someone's burnt dinner. The host panel by the front door was modern, glowing blue in the dim entryway, a perfect square of light bolted onto bricks that remembered candles and soot instead. I climbed past a burned-out floor lamp abandoned on the landing, the lion's head knockers on some older doors watching me with chipped, indifferent gold eyes. Raymai's unit was on the 4th floor, door 4B, a smooth white slab with a black keyless lock sitting right where a brass handle should have been. I stood there for a second and listened, the way I always do, forehead almost touching the wood, counting breaths and silence on the opposite side of the flat. No shower, no music, no soft television glow leaking under the door, just the faraway hum of the building's stomach and the faint tick of my own nerves. I entered the code, heard the small motor whir and the lock release with a bored little sigh, then opened the door with my hip, letting my nose walk in first. The flat smelled used but not wrecked. Cheap takeaway, coffee, a hint of cigarette smoke clinging to someone's jacket, and then to the curtains long after they left. I called out because I always do, even when the calendar swears the place is empty. "Hello? Cleaner here. If you're still inside, please don't scare me on purpose." No answer, no shuffle, no rustle of embarrassed guest grabbing a towel. Just the distant hiss of pipes in the walls and the low hum of the refrigerator doing its lonely work. I stepped fully inside and took everything in with one slow spin, the way you do when you enter a stage after the audience has already gone home. The living room was compact but styled for photos. Neutral sofa, throw blanket, minimalist art print of some city nobody could actually identify at a glance. The kitchen corner was tidy, just a few dishes in the sink, an empty bottle of wine, 2 glasses drying upside down like they were done talking for the night. The bedroom door was open. The bed was already half stripped, sheets pulled back, duvet bunched like someone had gotten up in a hurry that morning. So far, so normal. No blood, no broken glass, no overturned furniture. Just quiet. Too quiet maybe, but that might have just been my expectations pacing behind my ribs. I walked the flat with my usual routine, making a mental map. Where the cleaning would be light, where the mildew was gathering patience, where the tech was lounging. There was a small black router on a shelf near the TV, a smart speaker in the corner pretending to be a decoration, a camera over the front door pointed inward. And then there was the locked door Raymai had mentioned. Narrow, at the end of a short inner corridor, no handle, just a keyhole with an old-fashioned metal plate. It didn't match the newer interior doors, which were smooth, hollow, and color-coordinated. This one looked older, heavier, the paint more layered, like it had a history. Someone had painted over the edges so many times that the seam between door and frame was a white scar, thick and slightly uneven, like it wanted to seal completely. It had no label, no owner's closet tag, no casual do not enter. Just that old keyhole, staring back at me like a dark, unblinking eye in a too bright face. I put my hand against the wood and felt nothing. No hum, no vibration, no breath, just cold and the faint sense that the building had turned its head ever so slightly toward me. I texted Raymai a quick update. "Flat is empty. Guest is gone. No luggage, just normal mess. But your locked door looks like it's been locked since the previous century." He replied with a photo from his management app, the motion alerts stacked on his screen like a panicked heartbeat. The latest one was stamped with today's date. Same time, 02:17. Same label, internal hallway. Same location pin, this unit's tiny blue dot on the corner of a city map that had no idea what lived inside each pixel. I sent him a picture of the door and wrote, "If there is any kind of device hidden behind this, that would explain your ghost hallway. Who had the key last?" "No one has touched that door since I got the place," he answered. "Owner said it's just structural, an old service closet bricked off on the inside. I don't know if I believe him." I looked at the thin corridor leading up to the locked door and counted the steps. 5 floor tiles, each with the same pattern of wear, as if nothing had dragged across them in years. I put my ear against the door and listened, the way you listen to a seashell as a kid, waiting for an ocean that may or may not be hiding inside the curve. Nothing. Then, after a few seconds, something so faint I almost convinced myself I didn't hear it. A distant, low electronic click, like a relay switching far away. It might have been the fridge, it might have been the pipes, it might have been my own jaw clenching. But when I pulled back, the hair on my arms was standing up anyway. I decided to do the only thing I'm actually paid to do. Clean, observe, and not pretend I didn't notice the weird parts just because they weren't on the checklist. I started with the kitchen, letting muscle memory carry my hands through the routine, while my thoughts stayed parked down that little hall, in front of that locked door. As I wiped counters and stacked dishes, I scanned for more clues. Any sign the guest had been obsessed, frightened, curious about that part of the flat. There were no handwritten notes, no printed logs, no scribbles on napkins, just a phone charger on the nightstand and an empty mug with a ring of coffee around the bottom. The bathroom was small and plain, mirror slightly warped, tiles imperfect, shower curtain covered in little black city skylines that meant nothing and never existed. I checked the vent above the shower, and the fan cover near the ceiling, old habits tightening my grip on the flashlight as I looked for any glint of glass or fresh tape. Nothing, just dust. The kind of dust that takes months to gather, not the kind that rearranges itself around new electronics or rushed, guilty fingers. By the time I'd finished the basic cleaning, it was late enough that the outside noise had thinned to the occasional car and a distant, lonely tram bell. I should have left. I had done what I was paid for. But my eyes kept drifting back down that corridor to the door whose key existed only in someone else's story. I checked the time on the oven clock, 01:52. Too early for my notebook's favorite numbers, but close enough to make every minute ahead of me feel heavy. I texted Raymai, "I'm done. Flat is clean. But if your system alerts again at 02:17 tonight, it will be while I'm still here. Do you want me to stay and see what happens?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, returned. Like his fear couldn't decide whether to manifest politely or just slam itself against the glass of the screen. "If you don't mind staying," he wrote, "I'll pay extra. I just want to know if it's a bug or someone or something. I'm tired of being told it's just data drift." Data drift. As if doors open themselves in old buildings purely because numbers get bored and wander off in the night without checking out properly. I sat on the couch with my bag at my feet, lights dimmed, the corridor to the locked door visible in my peripheral vision like a small, unfinished sentence. The flat was quiet, but not dead. There's a difference. Dead rooms feel like nothing has ever happened. This one felt recent, like the air still remembered a conversation. The digital clock on the microwave blinked steadily towards 02:00, each minute hitting with the soft, insistent weight of a drip from a faucet in another room. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that this was just another weird tech issue, another story I'd write down and then fold into the growing, crumpled archive of my job. Still, I pulled out my notebook and wrote the basics. Date, address, host, unit number, note about the locked door and the repeated 02:17 internal hallway motion alerts. I left a blank line under it, as if I already knew something would fill that space before the night was over, something that didn't want to share a line with anything else. At 02:10, the flat felt like it had narrowed slightly, the walls leaning in just enough to make the corridor look longer from the corner of my eye. I sat up straighter, every sense tuned to that end of the flat. Even the small hum of the fridge began to sound like background music in a film trying to build tension on purpose. At 02:16, the microwave clock flickered for just a heartbeat, all segments lighting up before returning to the correct time with a faint hiccup in its electronic throat. I stared down the corridor, my attention pinned to the outline of the locked door, the seam of its frame, the sliver of shadow at the bottom where wood met floor. And then, as the digital display quietly rolled over to 02:17, I heard it, a soft mechanical chirp from the lock on the front door behind me. Every alarm in my body fired at once. I spun around, expecting to see the handle turn, the door swing open, someone walk in who absolutely shouldn't be there. But the door stayed still. The lock light blinked green for exactly 1 second, then went dark again, the mechanism whirring as if it had just decided to pretend nothing happened. I glanced at my phone, a new message from Raymai appeared. System log just pinged, internal hallway motion detected. 02:17, are you seeing anything inside? Internal hallway. Again, in a flat with no hallway on the floor plan, just a short corridor leading to a door that wasn't supposed to lead anywhere real at all. I turned slowly back toward that corridor, heart pounding loud enough to feel it in my gums, eyes adjusting to the low light as if I were underwater and surfacing. The locked door looked unchanged, still thick with paint, still keyhole dark, still stubbornly, aggressively closed. But the air felt different, like the temperature between me and that door had dropped a few degrees while my back was turned, leaving a thin, invisible river of cold to walk through. Then I noticed the sliver of brightness at the bottom edge of the door, where before there had been only shadow. A faint, narrow line of light bleeding gently onto the floor. It wasn't bright, not enough to come from a normal overhead bulb, more like the glow of a single screen in a dark room or a standby LED multiplied across several things. I approached slowly, every step deliberate, my brain screaming at my feet to stop, while my curiosity tugged the leash tighter with every tile I crossed. Up close, I could hear something on the other side now. A low electrical hum, the intermittent click of something mechanical cycling on and off at regular intervals. It sounded familiar, like a mixture of router noise, old hard drives spinning, and that particular, falsely gentle static you only hear when cameras are live and waiting. I put my palm flat against the door and felt a faint vibration I was sure hadn't been there an hour ago. A subtle tremor traveling from whatever lived behind the wood. "Raymai," I typed without looking away. "There is light under your locked door. I can hear devices humming. If this is just structural, it's a very busy piece of structure." His reply came fast and desperate. "I never installed anything behind that door. That space shouldn't even be accessible. The previous owner swore it was sealed years ago." I lowered myself to the floor and pressed my eye close to the gap at the bottom of the door, the cold from the tile creeping through my jeans and into my knees. Through the narrow slit, I could see only broken fragments. A concrete floor, cables snaking like black vines, the base of a metal rack loaded with blinking, patient lights. There were at least 3 tiny status LEDs visible from my angle, green, amber, and that unsettling, familiar red that always says recording, even when nothing else does. The hum resolved itself into individual notes. Cooling fans, spinning discs, a faint ticking I recognized from the first time I ever leaned too close to an active hard drive. Someone had turned this sealed owner's closet into a tiny server room, a hidden throat where the building swallowed information and never bothered to exhale it back out. I filmed what I could. The line of light, the faint glow, the barely visible blink of red winking at me through the gap like a tiny, smug pupil that thought it was hidden. I should have walked away, taken my bag, locked the front door, sent Raymai a neat, professional summary, and let professionals with tools and warrants handle the rest. But I've seen enough to know that by the time they arrive, the story is already half erased, cables pulled, hard drives gone, explanations cleaned up to sound harmless. I looked at the hinges, old metal, layers of paint, not designed to resist someone determined, just meant to look like they had. I wedged my gloved fingers under the hinge pins and pulled until my arms shook, feeling the resistance at first, then the slow, grudging upward slide of metal. The top hinge pin came free with a small, ugly sound. The bottom one fought longer, then surrendered, my palms stinging from the force of it. The door didn't fall. The layers of paint along the frame still held it in place like dried glue, keeping up appearances even as the actual structure gave way behind the scenes. I leaned my shoulder into it, pushed just enough, and felt the door shift a centimeter, then 2, cracking the painted seal with a soft, tearing sound. More light bled through, brighter now, wide enough that I could see the edge of a metal rack and the bundled cables climbing it like dark, eager roots. The hum grew louder, more insistent, the space behind the door exhaling stale, electronic heat, and the faint smell of dust baked onto circuit boards. "Stop," Raymai texted. "Please don't break anything yet. I'm calling the building owner. I didn't know there was anything like that there. I don't want it on me." It was too late. I had already put my hand in the story. The question now was whether I pulled the rest of me through or stepped back and let the door seal itself again. I eased the door open, just enough to see inside, just enough to make what I suspected feel real enough to write in ink later without doubting my own memory. The closet was small, but every inch of it was busy. 2 metal racks loaded with network equipment, cables labeled with room numbers and codes, 3 small black boxes with antennas. Each box had a familiar, hated red dot blinking on the front, and under each one a label printed in tiny, neat font: Bed, Living, Entry Cam. Above the racks, bolted to the wall, was a small screen cycling through feeds I couldn't fully see from my angle, numbers ticking in the corner of each frame like a heartbeat. For a second, I saw a bedroom I recognized faintly. Not this one, but one from another building, another part of town, the art on the wall unmistakable. Then the screen flickered, feeds changing, windows rearranging themselves like a kaleidoscope of strangers. Borrowed nights sliced into squares and taped together. Doors, beds, showers, hallways. Different decor, same layouts. Different cities, same cheap floor lamps. All of them labeled with codes, times, and that same minute appearing again. 02:17. On one window, then another, then a third. Little white numbers registered in small corners as people moved or didn't move or simply slept through their own surveillance. I hit record on my phone without thinking, heart pounding, arm steady, capturing as much as I could before the reality of what I was seeing caught up to itself and slammed shut. Then, as if some internal timer had tripped, every red dot on the boxes stopped blinking at once. All the status lights on the racks turned steady, the hum dropping a note lower. The screen went black, then showed only a single line of text in white on a blank background, in a simple system font meant to feel neutral and unthreatening. Maintenance window active, it said. SYNCING data, do not power off. For the first time that night, I felt something like anger cut through the fear, a sharp edge scraping away the helplessness I usually carry into these situations. Someone somewhere had built an entire hidden nervous system behind the wall of a daily rental flat, wired into other units, other buildings, possibly other cities entirely. They weren't ghosts, they weren't glitches. They were infrastructure, carefully installed, neatly labeled, politely documented, and completely absent from any listing description. I closed the door slowly, pressed it back into its painted frame, slid the hinge pins into place one by one with the reverence of someone resealing a tomb. The line of light under the door disappeared. The hum dulled. From the outside, the door went back to being just another patch of white paint and old wood. I texted Raymai 3 things: a photo of the racks, a still from the screen, and a note that said, "Call the police," and a lawyer, and whoever handles infrastructure crimes. He didn't reply right away, but I saw the message status change to read, imagined his face draining of color as the invisible back end of his comfortable business revealed itself. I left the flat cleaner than I found it, because that's still my job, even when I've accidentally peeled back the skin of the building to look at its wired bones. On the stairwell, the air felt different, like the building had chosen to pretend nothing had happened as long as I didn't say its secrets out loud between floors. At home, I opened my notebook and added a new heading with shaking hands. Hidden back-end closet, daily rental hub, 4B maintenance window at 02:17. Underneath, I wrote a sentence I had never put on paper before, even though some part of me had been thinking it since the first hidden camera, the first vent device, the first glitchy door. They are not separate stories, I wrote. They are different rooms in the same building, whether the walls admit it or not. I don't own the lock logs, the servers, the software, or the platforms. I don't control who checks in, who vanishes, who watches, or who quietly profits. All I really own is this: the few minutes I spend alone in each of these spaces, when the guests are gone, the hosts are messaging, and the devices still think nobody is paying attention. I clean daily rentals for a living, but lately it feels like what I really do is visit the quiet rooms between the cameras and the reports, trying to decide which parts belong in ink. So when you book a cozy city center studio with fast Wi-Fi and smart features, just remember there might be more than one lock, more than one hallway, more than one door. And if you ever notice a locked room that isn't on the floor plan, painted too many times, with a keyhole that's never used and a thin line of light under the bottom edge at night, ask yourself if the building is storing mops and paint behind it, or if it's storing something else entirely, something that never forgets any minute you spent on the other side. I'm just the cleaner who comes afterward, but I've started to realize I might be the only one who still walks through these places without a script telling me what to ignore. That's why, when my phone buzzes at night with a new code for a new flat and a host begging me to just check if everything is okay, I bring more than bleach and fresh sheets. I bring my notebook, my flashlight, my habit of listening at doors, and my stubborn refusal to accept glitch as an explanation for things that happen exactly at 02:17. Because one day, I might open a door I can't close again, or find a room that knows my name, or realize the system has finally noticed the cleaner watching it back. And when that happens, if it happens, I hope whoever comes in after me has the sense to look at the locked doors, the vents, and the logs, and not pretend they saw nothing at all. The morning after the hidden server room, Raymai called instead of texting, and his voice already told me the night had not gone in his favor. They came, he said. Police, building owner, some network rep. Everyone pretended to be surprised, then pretended it was all normal, then acted like I'd known all along. The building owner waved old blueprints and called it technical space. The network guy said data backbone and smart hospitality layer until the words stopped meaning anything. When I asked about the boxes labeled bed and entry cam, Raymai said, they called it internal shorthand and promised none of it is personally identifiable, just patterns. The police took my video, logged the room as infrastructure, and seemed more interested in whether he had tampered with the hardware than in what it had quietly been doing. After the call, Raymai forwarded an internal log snippet he was never meant to see, half redacted and still too revealing for my comfort. Time 02:17:03. Event, local door offset detected. Role, cleaner. Response, lock state temporarily overridden during sync window. I hadn't logged into anything, hadn't called support, hadn't pressed a button. I had just been there, and the system still gave me a name and filed me as an event. On the way to my next job, those words kept echoing in my head. Cleaner, offset, sync window. Like the system had finally turned its head and really seen me. A few days later, a different host I'd never met sent a strange request. Hey, he wrote, platform support said some cleaners notice patterns with devices. My place keeps flagging weird activity at 02:17. Can you check if it feels normal to you? He attached a chat screenshot. Support's message was simple and unsettling. Some cleaners are particularly observant of anomalies. It may help to ask your cleaning staff. No names, no locations, just the quiet admission that someone had been watching what I watch, quantifying how often I'm standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. The new flat looked like any modern listing. White walls, soft gray sofa, a plant trying its best in a corner, the same lock brand on the door, the same little ceiling sensor blinking. Probably nothing, the host said, jangling keys we didn't need. But the logs say micro-motion clusters at 02:17. Support calls it drift. My gut says it is. I cleaned, I checked, I found no hidden racks this time, no secret closet, no glowing server spine behind the wall, just the feeling that the wiring had moved somewhere less obvious. That night, my phone buzzed with a notification from an app I didn't remember installing. Its icon, a simple white door on a dark background. Your observational input has correlated with 17 recorded anomalies, the banner said. Would you like to help improve system integrity? There were 2 buttons, yes in big friendly letters, and not now in smaller text, like refusal was just another delayed form of consent. I didn't tap either. I deleted the app, restarted my phone, and hoped that was the end of it. When the screen came back, the icon was gone, but a new email sat in my inbox from an address that looked like a shuffled pile of characters. Opt-out preference recorded, it said. Certain telemetry may still be collected at the infrastructure level for safety and performance reasons. In other words, you can say no to the invitation, but not to the observation. That night, I dreamed of the hidden closet again. Only this time, when the screen above the racks cycled through labeled feeds, there was a new word under one of the red dots. Not bed, not living, not entry, just cleaner. In the dream, every time I moved, that light blinked once, twice, logging my existence like any other motion event, as if I'd finally joined the list of things worth tracking. When I woke up, my notebook was open on my chest, pen uncapped, a small blot of ink on the page where I must have drifted off mid-thought. In the margin, in my own handwriting, I found a simple line. 0217 is not just when they see guests. It's when they check who else is watching. So I adjusted. I still scrub sinks, strip beds, empty bins, and wipe forgotten fingerprints from glass. I still enter daily rentals after everyone else has decided their story there is finished. But I also keep a second layer of notes now. Model numbers on the locks, names on the routers, stickers on the access panels, brand logos on tiny white sensors in the corners. Some names repeat. One label in particular keeps resurfacing in fine print and diagrams, always tied to maintenance windows and overnight insight. I found a wrinkled brochure under a router once, half torn, half readable. In the corner, in small, confident letters, it said, Overnight Insight 217, see what spaces see. I don't know yet what I'll do with everything I'm gathering, or if anyone would even care. There's not much demand for ghost stories about server rooms and firmware. But I know there are more locked doors that never make it into listings, more sealed closets that hum quietly at 0217 while guests sleep on the other side of the wall. Behind some of those doors, someone is watching beds, doors, showers, hallways, and now, apparently, cleaners, reducing all of us to movement, heat, and habit. They can call it analytics, optimization, telemetry. They can file us as noise, roles, data points. They can rename the hour a maintenance window and pretend that makes it harmless. I'm just the person who comes in after checkout, holds the keys for a little while, and decides what ends up in bleach and what ends up in ink. So I keep cleaning, keep listening at quiet doors, keep writing down every time another place twitches at 0217 and pretends it didn't. And if one night I open a new daily rental, check the logs, and find a perfect record of my own steps already written there minute by minute, down to the second, at least I'll know this didn't start the night they finally noticed me. It started the first time I stayed in a room after everyone else left and refused to pretend the building was asleep when the system said it was still awake.